I really want to give a big condolence to the family of Mike Leach. He has recently passed away today. Had a massive heart attack that he died from his complications due to that. I really want to send our condolences to the family, the Leach family. They lost for the loved one that they lost, um, and a moment of silence for that. All right, so we're back. Again, man, Mike Leach, terrible loss for the football world. I don't think if anybody doesn't know who Mike Leach is, you should know who Mike Leach is. He's a big pioneer for what they call the air raid. He was definitely a big chapter in that. He definitely set it on fire with Texas Tech before Texas Tech was even in the Power Five, before they became to the Big 12. He definitely, changed that a lot. Even going to Washington State, he's always been Mike Leach. From all his interviews to favorite candy to the aliens to if you're big into that conspiracy theory, that's who Mike Leach was. A great head coach, man. I mean, for him to go to Texas Tech to Washington State all the way to Mississippi State, he did a lot of things at those two schools. Even Valdosta State, I don't know too much about him at Valdosta, but I remember him when he was definitely at Washington State and what he did at Washington State. A lot of big upsets, knock off Washington a couple times. I mean, he only had a playbook on one piece of paper, but that one piece of paper will definitely give your defense a run for their money. But Mike Leach, great head coach. Rough times, bad timing for what happened. Especially with the bowl games and how it all went on. But he's definitely going to be remembered. He might have been a head coach that very straightforward. You don't see those many head coaches anymore. You don't see them like that no more. They definitely those head coaches are gone in today's society. You're not going to see that kind of stuff anymore. But he said it as it was. I mean, he was definitely known for like in Mississippi State when he made that comment about the kickers, like, hey, if there's any kickers out there that want to come for a tryout, you're very welcome to. Which he made a good point. I mean, kickers couldn't hit a field goal in that day, couldn't kick nothing. They were just missing field goals left and right. So he made a pitch. Anybody ready for a tryout? Come on. Mike Leach is who Mike Leach is, but he will be remembered at Texas Tech, Washington State, and Mississippi State. He's left his mark on those programs, and he left a very good mark. So there's no sourness from his name. All right, let's move forward. So the Heisman. All right, everybody, and we're back. It's your Creative Notice podcast. It's your boy Adrian. Everybody else is not here right now. Bobby's out doing some vacation time, and Jeff has some things he's working on. Still working. We're normal people, as usual. But we're going to go ahead and jump into this show. So the Heisman results came out on this past Saturday, and Mr. Caleb Williams won it, which nobody should be surprised. I wasn't surprised that he won it when they had announced the finals, which was Caleb Williams, Stetson Bennett, C.J. Stroud, and Max Duggan. Stetson Bennett came in fourth place with some votes, so there were some voters out there that had a lot of interest in him, that had a lot of praise for him. You got to give it to Stetson Bennett. I know I've been very critical of Stetson Bennett, but I have to give it to him. He's definitely stepped up. Is he a day one starter for the NFL? Is he going to get drafted as a first round, second round, third round pick? No. And I think Stetson Bennett knows it. He's a great college football quarterback. He's very good at that. He's a good college football quarterback, and that's what he is. And I think Stetson Bennett knows that. Does Stetson Bennett has any ambition to want to go play in the big leagues? Of course. I mean, you play football to go to the NFL. You don't play football to stay stagnant. But that's what Stetson Bennett's going to want to do, and he's going to push for it. But to go back to Caleb Williams, it wasn't a big surprise, man. I mean, what Caleb Williams did for USC in his first year was astonishing. I mean, even last year when he was at Oklahoma, he did great things out there on the field. Watching Caleb Williams play football on the field, everybody wants to watch because he's going to do something magical. He's going to do something off the wall. He's going to keep the play alive. He's going to do something. He's going to run. He's going to sling the ball around. It's kind of like your Patrick Mahomes of the NFL. He's just backyard football with some great accuracy. And if you let him sit back in that pocket, he will light you up either with his legs or with his arms. If Caleb Williams didn't have that injury in that game that they had to play against Utah, that game probably would have been a whole lot different. Not to say they would have beat Utah, but you don't know. Once he had that hamstring injury, it was pretty much done. He went one-dimensional. USC became very one-dimensional. They could not keep up with the pace, and that's what happened. And then when Caleb Williams had to be asked to, run the ball. He just couldn't. So that solidified it. Max Duggan, I believe it went Caleb Williams 1, CJ Stroud 2, and Max Duggan 3. So let's go with that order. CJ Stroud, wasn't surprised he didn't win, and I think that game that he had against Michigan hurt him. That game against Michigan hurt him, and and even that game against Maryland also didn't help him out as much. That game against Maryland, he didn't show up. The defense showed up. The defense showed up for Ohio State, and granted, Ohio State they're dealing with a lot of injuries. Both of their starting running backs was out. I believe the wide receiver that actually opted out for the remainder of the season into the playoffs, which we will get into later. He's dealing with a hamstring. Been dealing with it for a minute. So yes, injuries happens, and that's no excuse. But for CJ Stroud, if you're going to be the front runner of the Heisman, he should have really stepped up and put that team on his back. And I think that's one of the things that knocks, and I think that's one of the things that's going to hurt CJ Stroud. Definitely going into the NFL draft is, can he put a team on his back, and can the team count on him? He's good with the weapons around him. And we got to remember, CJ Stroud didn't come out of high school like this, like a Caleb Williams, like a high 5-star recruit, or like Bryce Young, 5-star recruit. He didn't come out of high school like that. He was like a 4-star, maybe a high 4-star recruit coming out of California when he went to Ohio State when he committed. So, he has a lot. He has a very high ceiling. He kind of reminds me just like another Justin Fields when they played for Ohio State. They both got very high ceilings. They just got to work on the tangibles and get things going. And for CJ Stroud, he dropped those balls against Maryland. That Maryland game and that Michigan game definitely left a lot of bad taste in a lot of the voters' mouth. And granted, he also did a lot of great things in the regular season as well. As all the other games, Penn State is one of them. He did very well against Penn State. Uh, but even Michigan State, he did very well against Michigan State. But when it came to the games that really mattered, like they could have lost that game against Maryland if that defense didn't step up, and some questionable calls went against Maryland. Those calls weren't called, that game would have been different, and CJ Stroud would have been definitely questionable even more. But that last game against Maryland, and definitely that last game against Michigan at home, it really hurt. And granted, everybody has to step up and do their part, but I think the defense for Ohio State got tired. And with the way the Michigan was just leaning on them and running the ball constantly, over and over again. It just really hurt. And everybody started looking at CJ Stroud, and which he couldn't do. He started looking at everybody else like, hey, I need somebody else to step up. So that hurt him. Max Duggan, I think it was congratulations to Max Duggan getting invited to the Heisman. I think if Hendon Hooker didn't have that injury and he was able to finish out the regular season, regardless of the games that were lost that they took, regardless of that L they took to South Carolina, if Hendon Hooker still would have been playing, Hendon Hooker would have been in this race. Now, it depends on who would have been in it, Max Duggan or Stetson Bennett. But I really do believe that Hendon Hooker, if he didn't have that injury, he would have been in the at New York. Same thing goes for the Michigan running back. But right now, we're going to talk about Max Duggan. Max Duggan did very well. Max Duggan has been holding TCU down all season long, either with his arms or with his legs. And I mean, because that defense has not been holding up. I mean, this is what happens to them. And playing with fire eventually caught up to him in the last game of the season. It caught up to him in the most important game of the season, this game, the Big 12 championship. And that's what really hurt them. That's what really kind of hurt Max Duggan of him winning. I don't think he would have won regardless. I think he was just invited because of him and Stetson Bennett were probably most likely invited because of some of the things that happened throughout the season. And I think those two filled in those voids. I know a lot of people had a lot of backlash about Stetson Bennett going. Well, they got to have that same backlash with Max Duggan because he didn't really just wow a lot of people. There's been some games he just didn't play very well. Same thing like when they played against Kansas State early in the season. He didn't play well in that game. Same thing with Baylor. He didn't play well in that game. I mean, that game against Baylor came down to a 12-second run the team out there real quick and get set and kick the ball and hope it goes through. So, Max Duggan, TCU, they did their thing. I think Max Duggan did his part for the team. He's definitely anchored it down. I mean, he was gassed in that Big 12 championship game. If anybody didn't get to watch it, he was gassed. You could have seen it on his face. The young man was gassed. I mean, his face was so pink It wasn't nothing left for him. He was telling his teammates to get off him when he made that touchdown. He was like, "Get off me! Don't touch me! Leave me alone." But I think a lot of that stuff throughout the season really caught up to him. He's got to play consistent. And I think that all also revolves around the whole team. And Max Duggan is a good quarterback. He'll get drafted. I don't think he'll be the first 2 or 3 quarterbacks off the board, especially what's coming out, especially the players that's coming out of the college range. Bryce Young, Hendon Hooker. Who else is coming out? C.J. Stroud. You got a lot of quarterbacks that's coming out. You got some that's not, but I think Max Duggan will be the number 4, number 5 quarterback off the boards. Maybe a second, third round pick. He'll be a good quarterback to sit behind somebody and get used to the NFL, because what he does in college that won't fly in the NFL. You're not going to be just running and doing that stuff. Granted, Josh Allen does it, but he's not Josh Allen. We know that. We see that. And then last but not least is Stetson Bennett. Like I say, I think Stetson Bennett and Max Duggan were invited because of Hendon Hooker, and Blake Coleman. Those two didn't have the injuries, regardless of the wins or the losses. If Hendon Hooker and Blake Coleman didn't have those injuries, they would have been invited to New York. Those two definitely should have been in New York. And I'm not knocking Max Duggan or Stetson Bennett, but what Hendon Hooker did this year for Tennessee is wow. Remember Hendon Hooker, when he transferred to Tennessee from Virginia, he wasn't a starter. It was the other kid that's actually starting for Tennessee now. He was a starter, and that kid transferred from Michigan. So Hendon Hooker, after the other quarterback got injured, Hendon Hooker stepped in last year and he finished out the season, and he ended up keeping holding that job. And look what he did. I mean, he had Tennessee ranked number 1 all going into, I think it was like week 8 of the season after they had to play Georgia. So Hendon Hooker did a very good job. He definitely should have been invited regardless of the injury. Hendon Hooker did his thing all season long. He did his thing up until the last 2 games of the season, which he took an injury. Yes, he took an L against South Carolina, but that defense didn't help him out at all. That defense didn't help him out at all. The defense just dropped the ball, and and the offensive line just couldn't hold up. They were just pretty much tired. Once that defense of South Carolina kept putting pressure over and over, Hendon Hooker was asked to do more with his leg, and it was a non-contact injury, which he ended up tearing his ACL, which ended his rest of the season. Joe Milton, that's that kid's name. But yeah, I just really feel as if Hendon Hooker definitely should have been invited. Should have been invited, no matter what. Same thing with Blake Coleman. If Blake Coleman still was running without that injury, he'd have been invited. Simple as that. That ankle injury kept him out, and it ended it for a season. He should have been invited. Those two should have been invited. B.J. Robinson should have been closer in the votings. Simple as that. I mean, what B.J. Robinson did for Texas all season long is phenomenal, because it wasn't Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers didn't do anything, So B.J. Robinson and the other running back for Texas both did a hell of a job. They both should have probably had some type of knock at some type of door for the Heisman. But back to Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett did a good job. I mean, he's playing on a Georgia team that's stout on defense, and he has great playmakers around him. 2 monster tight ends. You got one that's about as tall as a Eiffel Tower, and then you got another one that's just a bowling ball of a tight end. And then you got a great offensive line who's the finalist as for the award for the best offensive lineman in the nation. Hey, and what Stetson Bennett has done with that team, he's made little to no mistakes. I mean, he hasn't been accurate. He hasn't been great playing, but he hasn't thrown a lot of interceptions neither. And his completion rate isn't bad neither. So Stetson Bennett has done a good job. I've got to give it Stetson Bennett because I was very critical of him. I'm a Georgia fan, and I was very critical of Stetson Bennett, especially in that 2020 season. And he recently came out and talked about that 2020 season when he got benched, and he explained that he was not good. He was terrible. He admitted it. He was not good. He was not good enough to lead this team to a national championship. 2021, you see what he did. Led the team to a national championship. Came off the bench after JT Daniels suffered an injury, took him to the championship, and won a national championship. And what is he doing now? He's taking his team to another championship, 13-0. 13-0. Now they're in the playoffs, getting ready to play Ohio State, and all he has to do is continue to do what he does best. Even like his post, he says the real season starts now. They only got 2 games left in the season. They need to knock off Ohio State and continue to do it whoever they play against, Michigan or TCU. So Stetson Bennett is doing. He did what he did to get his opportunity to go to the votings. I just think the voters looked at what Stetson Bennett did, looked at what Max Duggan did. They both were in their division title game, and then they voted them in. But they should not have kept Hendon Hooker and Blake Coleman. I'm going to put that out there, and I'm going to continue to put that. Hendon Hooker and Blake Coleman should have had an opportunity to be in New York and should have been voted. They were not in New York and not voted higher only because of one thing: an injury. If neither one of them dealt with an injury, you really think Caleb Williams would have been the winner? Let's think about it. I mean, the Heisman needs to be really looked at again a little bit different. I know everybody's talking about how Caleb Williams had the little stuff written on his fingernails. Who cares? Those players do that all the time. It's just that his is on his fingernails. You think those players do on the field? They talk trash to each other, cuss each other out. You think they don't message each other with those kind of stuff? Yes, they do. So I really do feel as if Blake Coleman and Hendon Hooker were not injured, it'd have been very questionable who would have won that Heisman and how that Heisman would have been voted out. So congratulations to Caleb Williams for winning the Heisman. Hey, and congratulations for bringing his offensive lineman. I mean, clearly he knew he was going to win because he had the whole offensive lineman there. And, which is right. His offensive lineman is the reason he's there. I think the offensive line and defensive line, they don't get enough praise. They're in the trenches. If you don't have good offensive linemen and you don't have a good defensive line, you're not winning games. It's as simple as that. Don't care what you got, air raid, whatever it is, run. If you don't have a good offensive line or you don't have a good decent line, you're not winning games. It's as simple as that. But again, congratulations to Caleb Williams. Keep doing your thing and keep it up. All right, so let's keep moving forward. So let's talk about Deion Sanders, Colorado. I know we chimed on this a while back, but I really want to give some more input on that Deion Sanders in Colorado because I was out for work, so I really have enough time to really talk about it like how I wanted to, and I was caught up watching the game. But the Deion Sanders to Colorado thing is very not surprising to me. I know a lot of people are very upset about him leaving the HBCU, but I'm not surprised. Deion Sanders wants to be NFL head coach. That's my personal opinion. I feel as if Deion Sanders wants to be an NFL head coach. For him to be an NFL head coach, he's going to have to prove a lot more than just coaching at Jackson State. And I think him going to Colorado State is going to be catapulting. It's going to catapult him to another bigger Power 5 school. Colorado is a stepping stone. So he's not stopping at Colorado. Y'all best believe that he will not be at Colorado long. Give him 4 years at Colorado. Let him have the kind of years that he had at Jackson State, which the first year, it won't be pretty for him. I'm just putting that out there. He's in the Pac-12, and if you think Utah, Oregon, UCLA, USC are going to allow him to come in there, regardless of all his transfers, and start beating up on teams, it's not going to happen. They already are solidified themselves as dominant teams. USC, UCLA, all those teams, Cal, all those teams in the Big 12, they've already got their depth going, and then they're going to keep going into the transfer portal. Deion Sanders is going to have a lot to prove. And I think this Colorado job is going to be one of those things that he's going to really be able to have the opportunity to prove himself that he's an NFL type coach. Deion Sanders is not going to, if you looked at what he did at Jackson State, you'll see his MO. His recruiting pitch is just Deion Sanders. That's the recruiting pitch. If you want Deion, you want to go to school where you're going to have a lot of media attention, you're going to have a lot of cameras around, you're going to get it. All he got to do is just be like, come play for me. Deion Sanders, kids are going to want to go play for him. It's Deion Sanders. Who doesn't want to play for him? He's going to get a lot of kids out the transfer portal. That's what he's going to do. You best believe a lot of those kids that said Jackson State, I'm not going to say all of them. I know everybody's saying that whole Jackson State school is going to jet boat. I don't think so. I think he's probably left a message to them saying, don't do it. Because I don't think anybody understands how the portal works. That portal is something different. And we'll get into that because that's my next topic. But let's stick with Deion Sanders. I think what Deion Sanders is going to do at Colorado, he's going to go into that transfer portal and he's going to work his magic in that transfer portal. He's going to pull some key players out of there that's going to help him be competitive in the next season. That's what he's going to do is keep him competitive so he can build for the next 2 or 3 seasons. I could see him being there for 4 years. I don't see him being there for long. Give him 4 years, maybe five, depending if he has 1 or 2 bad years. But give him 4 to 5 years at Colorado. And if he excels at Colorado, which I'm putting a lot of bank on it, I think he will. I think this is a good thing. He's going to get the quarterback he needs because most likely his son's going to transfer. Though one of the quarterbacks for Colorado's already jumped in the transfer portal, said he's leaving. Hasn't even had the first season of competition for a starting position. He's already bolted. Then comes along, Notre Dame had a commitment. He decommitted from Notre Dame, a running back, a four-star running back. He's committed to Colorado. So Deion Sanders is already making waves. I think he also already picked up a kid from the transfer portal. So Deion Sanders is already doing his thing. So this year, looking at their calendar, looking at their schedule, their schedule is it's a little shaky for them because they already come off a 1-11 season. And then you're asking those kids to go out there and do it again with a new year head coach. Plus, Deion Sanders has also, plucked analyst from Alabama who's going to be the defensive coordinator. So Deion Sanders has set himself up and he's building himself up with coaches that understand the recruiting to get at a higher program. He understands what they need. So he's going out there, he's going to get this talent, he's going to get the coaching staff, he's going to do all that. And granted, now his first year, I'm telling y'all now, his first year won't be pretty. He'll probably win more than one. I give him 3 or 4 games. I give him 3 or 4 games. Maybe I might have to come back later, depending on how they do in the recruiting class and in the transfer portal. But I give Deion Sanders a 3 or 4 game, 4-8 maybe season, 3-9 maybe season, maybe a 5-7, depending on how they go into that transfer portal and what they get talent wise. The second year, they're definitely going to do a big improvement. They might even just go 10-2. That's just a good bet. And then, we'll see. That third year, we'll see what Colorado is. I'm not going to say they're going to be in, national. I'm not going to say they're going to be in the college, playoff picture, but they just might be able to be in their Pac-12. They're going to be in that Pac-12 title game at least twice while he's there. They're going to be there. Now, granted, when he was at Jackson State was already a powerhouse once before. You got to remember, if you go back and look at Jackson State, they won plenty of SWAC titles. Plenty of SWAC titles. So, Jackson State has always been a big time powerhouse. It's just like, Grambling always been a big time powerhouse in the HBCU. FAMU has always been a good one. So there's a lot of good schools. Southern University has always been a good one, and the HBCU realm. So when he went to Jackson State, all he had to do was just help turn it around. So now him going to Colorado that has a better facility, more money that can get poured in, bigger boosters, a lot of things. Rehab centers. He has an abundance of resources at his helm that he can get access to that he couldn't get the same access to at Jackson State. So that's why I wasn't surprised. Now I do understand why a lot of folks wish he would have stayed there, especially in the Black community. Like I understand, I understand 100%. Like yes, for HBCU schools to get to where they need to be at, he was that stepping stone. What he should have done was went out and try to recruit more, big time Black head coaches that were once players to come and coach at other HBCU schools to get some of those powerhouses. And then when he get those powerhouses up and running, try to find a way to pull those powerhouses into these Power 5 schools, conferences, and get them in there so they can start getting that revenue. Because that's all it is revenue. We, HBCU schools just want to be on the same playing field. And, we have the opportunity. Now that opportunity took another step back, maybe a 4 or 5 more steps back. You see what I'm saying? Because Deion Sanders was that gateway to take us where we needed to be going to. But, like I said, Deion Sanders' ambition, I see him wanting to be an NFL coach. I don't see him wanting to be a college coach for long. I think his real goal was to get to the NFL and really start coaching at that level. That's where I see him trying to do. That's where I can really see him trying to make a big step at. So this right here, going to Colorado, is that one step. Like Jackson State was the foundation. He built the foundation. Now going to Colorado, now he can start putting up his pillars, his drywall and stuff like that. And then the next school is going to be when he's going to start bringing in furniture, boom, 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 start setting it. Now really getting building that house. So I can really see Deion Sanders um, leaving Colorado when the right job comes calling. But it all depends on how he does in Colorado, which I think he'll do very well because the Pac-12 is going to be losing UCLA and USC in 2024. They might not use UCLA because of the public schooling, the way how UCLA falls in the public school program. In California, they might not lose UCLA, so they'll probably end up Big Ten probably end up trying to pluck Washington or Oregon, but still the Pac-12 will be wide open in 2024 for somebody to steal and dominate. And Colorado, with him going to Colorado at the right time, is perfect plucking. So, again, that was my take on Deion Sanders. I think I'm not surprised with the decision that he made. Um, I just think him making that decision, for the HBCU schools is going to be another long step because, he was that he was that vision. He was something that a lot of kids would mind to go play for. So, congratulations to Colorado. You got a good one. He's not going to do a lot of recruiting. He's just going to say, "My name is Deion Sanders. Come play for me," and he'll get a couple of good kids. I don't think he'll get a lot of 5 stars, like the big time 5 stars that he needs, but he'll get a lot of good ones. All right, so let's move on to the last little subject. Let's talk about this transfer portal. And let's talk about let's really get into it about how this is really going to change a lot of things for these young men. So the transfer portal is pretty much a wide open, like free agency for these young men to go in there and give a shot and an opportunity to try and play for, some more opportunity to get to the NFL. This is for transfer portals really should be for a lot of young men who probably was down in the depth chart. When they went to school, they came there with a lot of ambitions and goals, and they got there and they realized, well, I'm not the only 5 star or the 4 star or the 3 star. They got to really grind and push forward. And truth be told, they get there and they realize, oh man, these 2, 3 guys, they're better than me, faster than me, stronger than me. The instincts is better. What do I need to do? I want to play football. Well, the transfer portal. They can go in the transfer portal. They want to play football. They still have ambitions to get to the NFL. Here's a shot. You go in the transfer portal, you put your name in the transfer portal, and coaches can come and reach out to them and, be like, come play for my school, this and that. Here's the thing and the issue where I think a lot of young men are missing the importance of a transfer portal and not understanding how this thing works. If you were a 4 star or 5 star recruit that went to a transfer portal, and you're looking to go play somewhere where you can be a starter, there's multiple kids that's doing it right now. Every kid look at Alabama. I think Alabama has the highest recruits that's jumped in between them and Texas A&M has jumped in the transfer portal. I think it's like 14 or 12 or 14 kids from both of those schools, Texas A&M and Alabama, have jumped in the transfer portal. And a lot of those kids are high bidders. Like you got some kids that were starters. Like the offensive lineman that came from Alabama, he was a starter. I think it was like a starter, like in the left guard or right guard, or whatever it was. He was on offensive line. He was a starter. He's jumping the transfer portal. Another kid from South Carolina Gamecocks, Marshawn Lloyd, jumping the transfer portal. So you're getting all of these big time starters, jumping the transfer portal, just like Cade McNamara. He was a starter at Michigan, lost a starting job at Michigan to JJ McCarthy. He's done jumped in transfer portal. And now he's already signed with Purdue. He was smart, but he is a hot commodity. Cade McNamara is still a hot commodity. All right, remember this is the same Cade McNamara that took Michigan to the playoffs last year, and they only lost to Georgia in the playoffs. That's the same Georgia that won the national championship. So he wasn't bad. It's the same one that beat Ohio State. Granted, Ohio State ran the ball up and down the field, so he wasn't asked to do much, but he was asked to drive the bus, and that's what he did. But for like young kids, like JT Daniels, where when he was in high school, he reclassified so he can go to the college Rams early. So he reclassified so he can go to college football. Went to college football. He committed to USC. Started at USC. Got injured. Jumped in the transfer portal. Went to Georgia. Got injured again. Jumped in the transfer portal. Went to West Virginia. Didn't pan out well. Got benched. Now he's back in the transfer portal. It's going to be hard, man. Like these kids got to understand, like the transfer portal is flooded with so much talent. I think they got I think they said in 72 hours, 1,000 kids have jumped in this transfer portal, and that's every kid from the Power Five to the Group of Five that jump in the transfer portal thinking that it's going to be easy to try to find home. You're going to have some. You're going to have some that's going to find home. For example, Clemson's quarterback DJ Uongale, he jumped in the transfer portal. Yes, he didn't have a great season at Clemson in those 2 years he was there. That system isn't meant for him. It isn't meant for him. That Clemson was never meant for him. And I think that's one thing those kids get kind of confused is when they go to these schools and they thinking, oh, I can play in this system, this and that. But nah, he's not a Trevor Lawrence and he's not a Deshaun Watson. And I think that's what people started putting too much pressure on him. He needs to go to a school where the pressure is not that heavy and he's being asked to be DJ. DJ is he can run, but he needs like speedsters all around him. Clemson already didn't have elite wide receivers last year, so and they didn't have it the year before, so he was already up a wall. But there's no excuse because K Cubby comes right in and wins them their the ACC championship, against a trash North Carolina team. But that's another team. North Carolina done lost two of their DBs, jumped in the transfer portal. Tony Grimes was a five-star recruit who reclassified as well. His first two seasons, I guess he didn't like the way it panned out. Now he's in the transfer portal. And he was a starter. It wasn't like he was in the depth chart. Like he was like, the second string. He was a starter. And he's in the transfer portal. So clearly it's not him. I think he's looking for the opportunity to really shine on a defense where it can be a shutdown defense. It's going to be hard. The transfer portal is really going to swallow up a lot of these young men, and a lot of them are going to get picked up. A lot of these, like Tony Grimes, are going to get picked up. DJ Uwangale going to get picked up. A lot of those Marshawn Lloyds, they're going to get snatched up. But it's just ones that go into the transfer portal, like that's hoping to just to get to these schools where they're going to find themselves. Well, you might have to transfer to a Temple or Middle Tennessee or Kent State. That's what a lot of them kids are going to end up transferring to. And I think a lot of them thinking that they want to go to these big time schools like a Alabama or Ohio State where they got depth. So if you go there, you might be there for depth. You might not be a starter, and if you do go there having the ambition to be a starter, you're going to have to compete for that starting position. So a lot of these schools that these big time schools that go to the transfer portal, they don't go for transfer portal because they need it. They go because they might need that one position. Like Georgia, when they went to transfer portal and they got the cornerback that came from Clemson, it was a need at that position. It was a need. So they got it. And it worked out. Georgia won a national championship. But, if it's not a need, most likely it's going to be for depth. These schools are not in dire need of talent because they have talent. They just need talent to grow. So what do? They go in transfer portal to get depth. Whereas schools like Kent State and Temples and Cal, they get them because they need them. And they're going to make them, hey, yeah, you're going to be a starter here. You come here, you play, you be a starter. That's what they sell them on. And they'll go there and play. Like, I can really see a DJ going back west where he'll go to a Cal that needs a quarterback, or like an Arizona State, or because, here's a good one, Emory that transferred from Florida. He transferred to Arizona State. Now he's back in the transfer portal again. It's at some point, man, you're going to have to learn that either you're going to compete or not compete. You can keep going to transfer portal, but what are you going to a transfer portal to do? If you go to a school with the ambitions that you're going to go there and it's going to help your draft stock and get you into the position where you want to get drafted, then that depends on how you play now. But keep jumping to transfer portals to go to school at the school to get your draft stock up. It's just not going to work. Sometimes it's best to just, play what you work with and keep trying. Like, it's one thing if you're a Joe Burrow. That is the perfect story. Joe Burrow was at Ohio State behind a lot of talent at quarterback. And he went to a transfer portal. He ended up transferring to LSU, and his first 2 years were perfect. Yes, first year, I think LSU went 9-3, if I'm correct. 9-3. And then the second year, undefeated. That is a team, that's a once in a lifetime team we probably won't see for another while. We won't see another team like that again. It's just nasty, especially on the offensive line. Nobody can stop that offense. Nobody could. I don't care who it was. Nobody could stop that offense. So, Joe Burrow is a good example of him going to the transfer portal. That makes a good example. When you're that talented, and you're just stuck behind a lot of other talent, and you go somewhere and you know you're gonna be a starter and you know you're gonna do very well in Excel, okay. But if you go to transfer portal, you jump out of transfer portal and you go to another, you keep going to schools and schools. Well, it's not the schools, it's you. So this transfer portal is going to be crazy, man. It's going to get wild. Then you're going to have more kids keep jumping in and out. And trust me, a lot of schools going to have, like Michigan's going to have it, Ohio State's going to have it, Georgia's going to have it. All these schools that has all these playoff teams, TCU's going to even deal with it. And TCU can't afford too many kids in the transfer portal, so TCU's going to have kids jumping in the transfer portal on top of kids declaring for the NFL draft. So on top of the NFL draft is getting full, you're gonna have kids filling up the transfer portal. So you know, it's gonna be a wild one. I think this transfer portal this year is gonna be wild because a lot of kids want to go to the NFL. Their ambitions is to go to the NFL. I think the 2020 season has really solidified it where kids can play 6 to 7 years if they want to, especially in that 2020, especially that 2020 year. They get the opportunity to get an extra year. So, if they were a second string starter or a third string starter for 2 years straight, they still got 3 more additional years to play. So they can be 5 years in college football playing until they're ready to go to the NFL, which it might not be a bad thing for a lot of kids to really get the work in before they go jump into the transfer, before they go to jump into the NFL, get some work in. But jumping from school to school to school, it's not the school's issue. All right. It's not the school's. It's the player. I understand like a Joe Burrow. That's a great situation. That was just perfect. It worked that perfect for Joe Burrow. But if you was a starter for 2 or 3 years and then you want to leave because you don't like the way things panned out the way you plan, like you trying to have these, like a lot of these kids are stat pack. That's all they want. They just want stat, numbers. That's crazy. Another Jeremiah. He went to Florida State. I forgot his last name, but he went. He came from one of them small colleges, and he transferred in. I think it was like at Kansas University, not Kansas University, like Missouri, some small school in Kansas City, Missouri, a community college. And he transferred in from Georgia, and he was deep in the depth. Like, he had B.J. Ojolari, he had Adam Anderson, he had Notice Smith. There was a lot of talent. He was getting rotated. What did he do? He transferred to Florida State. Great 2 years. What happened to him? He was drafted, I think, with a second round. Drafted in the second round, high second round draft pick. Great story. Those make sense. Those make sense when it turns out best for them. So I'm really interested to see how the transfer portal works. I'm really trying to see what more players are going to keep jumping in to the transfer portal, leaving because whatever the reason that they're leaving. It's going to be interesting. So this season is going to be interesting. I can't wait to the NFL. I'm not the NFL, the college football playoffs, the games. Those two games get kicked off. We're definitely going to cover those two games with the Michigan versus TCU, and then Georgia versus Ohio State, or vice versa, Ohio State versus Georgia, and Michigan versus TCU, or TCU versus Michigan, however you want to look at it. We're going to cover those games, and then we're also going to cover the bowl games that's out, especially the good ones. We're going to really get into some of those bowl games, really look at some of those bowl games and see, make our prediction of who's going to win. But as always, it's your boy, Adrian. Creative Notes Podcast. Like, subscribe, comment. We appreciate everything you're doing. And I'm out. Peace.